Okay. So Aubri Stanger, I was sitting here thinking about when I ran into you guys, like we had
Yeah.
been connected through a mutual friend, my
Yes.
family member on our side and a friend of yours. And
Yeah.
so we had like followed each other on Instagram, but I was thinking about that moment, like how weird is it that we've got two American families,
Hmm.
we're in Japan. We had kind of talked about, hey, are you going to be in Tokyo at the same time? And we decided to meet up. The biggest city, the most populous city in the world. And we meet
Yeah.
up at the kind of this food court at the Sky Tree, in the middle of Tokyo.
Yes.
And
McDonald's.
yeah, exactly, right in front of it. Okay. So I was thinking about like my first impression was interesting. And I reflect probably too much. Melody gives me crap because I'm always just like
Yeah.
introspective and whatever, but you guys were so chill, so
Are
calm.
so nice.
There's a lot of running around in America. You think about if you were in a food court, kids would be
Yeah.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Our kids and your kids immediately kind of meshed in. They're different ages, but they were just
Yeah.
there. And the same thing with Melody and you and me and Judd. Like it was
Hmm.
just this cool moment. So
Yes. I
I don't
agree.
know. That quietness and kind of like just being present. I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
travel thing. I don't know if it's kindred spirits, but that was interesting.
Yes. I love that. And it's so funny. Like my daughter, she's 3 and she kept being like, when are we going to see our cousins again? Like she thought that your boys were like her cousins. She was so confused. We're like, oh, they're just friends. But I think it was funny because our kids like instantly connected and your boys were so sweet and were so kind to even Charlie, who she's just this little 3-year-old. And it was so nice to just like have people that were going through the same thing as us. And you guys had been out for what, like 6
I
months
think
by then,
we
right?
left in August, and I think that was March. So yeah, six,
Yeah.
seven
Yeah.
months.
So a while. And so it was nice to kind of sit down and like feel validated by Melody and you about like, okay, yes, we went through this too, or like this is our feelings. And it was in Japan such a cultural shift, right? We talked about that and it's being present there in that quiet moment where like they are quieter as people and getting to talk and just like a surreal moment, being
Hmm.
like you said in Tokyo, Japan with families who coincidentally, like we live in Florida, but we're from Utah. So everybody's
Exactly.
from Utah, born and raised. Like it was just like a surreal, amazing moment. And I feel like it was also very uplifting for me to like be able to speak English and have
Oh my
a
gosh.
friend and, it's just crazy.
I thought the same thing. And then, and I mean, we only spent a couple hours together and we just really kind of each picked a different spot to eat. And some kids needed some
Yes.
McNuggets and some, I went after
Yep.
some Kobe beef and I don't know.
Yep.
It was just those 2 hours were pretty special just because you're right. Kindred spirits and felt seen and validated. So,
Yes. Yeah. It was
okay.
amazing. We think about it all the time.
So there's Tokyo. So will you just kind of walk me through the logistics of the trip, when you left, when you came home,
Yeah.
and we'll kind of maybe dig into other things after that. But just tell us
Yeah.
what the whole trip was.
So we left in January from Florida and we ended up going to fly back to Utah. We stayed with our family and said our goodbyes for a few weeks because our plan was to start in Australia. So obviously like it saved us 5 hours from our flight to get to Utah first. So our first stop was Australia. We decided to do that because weather-wise, like that was something we were really conscious about when we were deciding where we were going because we had kind of a general outline of which countries when. And it was weather. Like we wanted it to be summer in Australia. The last time we went to Australia was in 2016 and we did Sydney and it was summer and it was one of my favorite places. So I was excited to go back in the same season, be with our kids and see more of Australia because last time we only stayed in Sydney and this time we got to like venture around and see a lot of like the more rural areas of Australia, which was amazing. Highly recommend.
Totally.
But so when we went to Australia, we decided, okay, we're going to do 30 days. Right off the bat, our situation was so chaotic because my husband loves to hunt. And so New Zealand, I don't know if you've ever seen those red stags. They call them the atoms of the stag because they're like the original huge, massive, monstrous beast stag. So he's like, I cannot go to Australia and be that close to New Zealand and not do this. So we all got the flu before we were
Oh
supposed to
gosh.
leave to go to Australia. So we ended up having to book our flight out 4 days past when we were supposed to leave. Well, those 4 days we were supposed to be him in Australia with us, getting settled, getting everything ready, and then he was going to leave to go hunting. So we flew into Australia, literally right off the bat. We say our goodbyes. I take the luggage. I take the kids. I go get the rental car. I'm in Australia by myself and he has to fly to New Zealand for this hunt an hour later.
Yep.
So that was like our initial shock of this trip. Like, thankfully, it was somewhere I had been. They speak English. It's a little bit easier, but I was like, man, I'm in a different country with my kids. Check-in isn't until 3 p.m. Like, we're here at 7 a.m. What are we going to do? You know? So I think that was kind of like the preface for our trip. We started in chaos and it was kind of like, well, it can only go up from here, you know?
Totally.
So
That
was
phrase
great.
of get comfortable being uncomfortable, like I hate it
Yes.
because it's so overused,
Yeah.
but it's weird. Like you kind of flex that muscle because you just landed in chaos, and I'm sure that wasn't the only chaos that actually I know
Oh,
the
no.
story, some of this.
Yeah.
So there,
Yeah. So it is. It's just pure chaos. And so I feel like it was so stressful in the moment, but I'm so grateful that that's how the trip started because it kind of like gave me this reality check of like, you got to just go with the punches, you know, like this is never going to be perfect. It's never going to align exactly how you want it to. There's always going to be something that happens. And like your attitude and how you choose to perceive the moment makes or breaks this opportunity. And we kind of like let our kids know too, like, hey, this is hard, like, but this is going to be so rewarding. And I think that it was just such a great way to start the trip in chaos and like have that realization of I get to choose how this is going to go and like just accept this chaos as it comes, you know?
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Yeah.
And there's something you just said that's actually really interesting because I think if you recognize that, hey, this is going to be hard, and you almost just like say it out loud, it weirdly, so then when it is hard, you're like, I said it, and it is.
Yes.
Like it's a mental thing. So that's awesome.
It totally is. So, but then Australia ended up being amazing. We loved it. Our kids loved it. We saw everything we wanted to see. It was just like this awesome experience. It was actually one of the few places that like when we left, I was so distraught. Like I was like, no, I'm not ready, even though it had been 30 full days, you know?
Okay, so
Loved
where'd you
that.
bounce around? Tell me where so landed in Sydney. He goes
Yes.
hunting in New Zealand for a few days, comes
Yes.
back, and then tell me just
Yes.
kind of quick outline of
So,
those 30 days.
From Sydney, then we went to Kangaroo Island, which is just right outside of Adelaide. It's a little island that you have to take a ferry to. It's amazing. Like if you envision Australia, like Kangaroo Island, wild kangaroos everywhere, koalas crawling around, lizards, snakes, beautiful ocean, outback-esque spiders. Actually, Kate, we did not see a single spider outside of the mountains in Australia. And I was shocked because I actually was so paranoid. I'm like checking under pillows. I'm like checking our suitcases every day, but I didn't see a spider. So
even up in Cairns and Queensland, you didn't see anything?
Queensland, we saw them on the hike, like on the trees in the big, like webs, but we never had one in an Airbnb. We never had one in the hotels. Like I literally was terrified. Like I was just waiting for it. It never happened.
I think it's like a scare tactic they use to keep like foreigners out.
Oh wait, I know. They're like, oh, we have massive spiders. You do not want to come here.
That's right.
Yes. So that was good, but that was so fun. It was very rural. That's a place where a lot of Australians actually go to holiday with their families. And so it was really cool because it was just a lot of locals that were there, not a lot of American tourists. So we kind of liked that too, getting to know people. From there, we went back to Adelaide and stayed in Adelaide for a few days. Then we went into Alice Springs in the Outback, which I'm just going to tell you guys, like, this may be a disappointment. Just don't do it. Like, so many bugs, so many flies. We had like these fly things over us because our toddler would not even leave the hotel room because they are like aggressive flies, like trying to attack you because it's mating season. So that was like our first thing right off the bat, like tons of flies. There's not a lot. And like really, it's cool. Like the stars are amazing. They're beautiful, but it's like a rock. And the town down there was actually pretty scary. Like we did not expect that. It's kind of like where our Native American areas are and like the reserves and stuff like that. It's that for Australia, for the Aboriginal people. And actually like literally the week after we left, they ended up having like this huge uprising and they were like starting buildings on fire and keeping people from leaving. And it was pretty scary. Alice Springs was kind of a no for me.
Okay,
but
I get that.
It was still cool that we got to go and see the Outback, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there we went to, what is it? Is it Owen? No. Why can I not think of this area? Anyways, National Park, brain dead. And then from there we went to Cairns, which was amazing. We loved that. We saw the Great Barrier Reef. We did all the things there. That reminded us very much of Hawaii. We loved it there. And then from Cairns we ended up leaving out of Brisbane, which we loved so much. Like the food there, the culture, just like It's such a clean city. They have so many cool free things. Like there's this lagoon in the middle of their city with sand all around it, lifeguards, restaurants, totally free. Like, we're like, where is this in America? You know?
Seriously.
So that was really cool. That was our last area that we flew out of from Australia. And that was sad. But
I know.
then we went to Japan.
So we spent 6 weeks in Cairns and did the Great Barrier Reef. And it was one of those things like, that was a pretty special place. You're right. A lot like Hawaii. Speak English. They drive on the left side of the road. Other than that, like food was great. We loved it. We want to get down to Brisbane though.
Yes, you guys have to go. There's like this food court area called North End, and it's literally like all of these boxes, like loading boxes, because it's on the side by the sea. And they have like every type of like food you could ever eat. And it's massive. And we're foodies to our core. Like part of the reason we wanted to travel is to just eat. So when we went there, we went there like 4 nights in a row because it literally is incredible. So if you're ever there, you have to go there. It's the North End. I think it's North End Eatery, and it is seriously incredible. So just for next time on your list. Yes.
We'll do it. We'll put in the show notes. Link to it. Okay. So from there you bounce to Japan and go keep going.
So Japan, we did like we rented a car for all 30 days, which by the way, anyone listening, you have to have an international driver's license for Japan. We learned that the hard way. Online is lying when they tell you you don't. So another thing, we got there, didn't have an international driver's license. Chaos again, but it was great. So we started in Tokyo, and that's where we met up with you guys, which was so fun. But like, I think we talked about this. It's just such a culture shock because I think in our minds, we think that everywhere is kind of westernized, at least from like where my husband and I have traveled a lot. Prior to this, everything was pretty westernized. Like people speak English, like there's signs in English. It's like pretty meshed culturally. And then you walk into Japan, which is like, no, it is their way. It is their culture. Like hardly anyone even in Tokyo spoke English, and like no signs are in English. And it's not even like a language that you could be like, yeah, that looks like washing machine or whatever. It's like, no, that's like a little house. Like, I don't know what letter that even is, you know? So
Melody took a picture. She took a picture of me and I was standing, we were just walking down the streets. I think we were in Osaka, and there was a house that I kind of stood and spread my arms out, and it was as wide as me. Like that was a house. It was just interesting. City life is a little different than what we're used to here.
Yeah. It's just it's so different. It was very small. Like we couldn't use the appliances. One thing that we were kind of shocked by is, and I don't know if you guys realize this, but the hot water heaters, like they're not automatic. You have to like go to this thing on the wall and turn your hot water on.
Yes.
Again,
I forgot
not
about this.
English, not in English. And so we get there, there's no cell phone. Like, what is happening, you know? It literally took us a solid 24 hours to figure out how to even survive in Japan.
Okay, so what app did you guys use for Translate? We just used Google Translate.
Google Translate, yeah. Honestly, Google Translate is amazing, especially with like their camera ability, because you can like hold your camera over the words and it like tells you pretty much what it says, right?
You can kind of get a general sense of what it's talking about.
Yes. So I felt like that was the most helpful when we were traveling, was just the picture version of it. Cause like we weren't communicating with a lot of people like verbally. It was mostly just like menus or like pointing at things or trying to figure out how to work appliances in our Airbnb, you know? So
I have a memory of like, we were trying to go from Osaka to Hiroshima. And so we had to take the bullet train, and it was like we had gotten around okay, but we had to make a connection, and it was totally confusing. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. I'm going to go Google Translate with this guy. He just no English. And that's surprising. Like, I'm with you. We totally expected someone to be able to just pitch in and help a little bit, and it just didn't happen in Japan.
No.
I have a cousin that served her 2-year mission there, and she was telling me that like they get years of experience of English in school. Everyone does.
Yeah.
But because of just kind of this is a little bit what you're talking about, culture, that there's this, we don't want to take risks. We want to make sure that everything's just in a box. We don't want to, and so they're a little nervous to try to speak English. Like, I told her about this experience, and this guy, I'm trying to talk to him, and he just was not, and she's like, he 100% understood you. But he just wasn't going to take the risk of like messing up in English. So I was like, that was one of the few times that I'm speaking into, Google Translate and giving it to him, and it worked. But yeah, that moment's like, oh, this is so frustrating. And it's on me because I'm in your country, but this is just frustrating.
Yeah, it's so hard. And also, I like don't know if you felt this way, but I felt like people acted like people did speak English there. The people we talked to, no one ever warned us about that. So we were like, okay, yeah, we'll be totally fine, you know? But on the other side of it, it was kind of cool because I feel like that's the only place that my kids really like picked up on certain words in the language. Like by the time we left, they could say like, hello, goodbye, thank you, how are you, where's the bathroom? Like they were actually pretty fluent, and our 3-year-old said it better than any of us, which is crazy, just the way their brains work. But yeah, so I felt like that was kind of cool, and it gave them an opportunity. Like, I think the initial response to Japan was like, man, this is intimidating. This is scary, like even for as well traveled as we were. But then like the longer we went there were things that were like, yes, still stressful. Like we talked about this, the quiet kid culture. They love children so much. They're so accommodating for children, but it's very like, kids are quiet, like even at parks, like you don't hear kids screaming and yelling like you do in America. And so that was very difficult to kind of be like explaining that to our young kids about like, we have respect for other people because this is how they are and this is how we're going to act while we're here. Like it was wild, and it was so cool to be able to give them that opportunity to be a part of a culture like that for 30 full days and try all the foods and all the fun drinks and just like the endless kid opportunities, because my husband and I always say Japanese people are just like grown children. Like they love kid stuff. They love video games and anime and Disney.
Animals and yes, all the things.
Just, so there's so much for kids to do there. So we always say we're like, we didn't appreciate Japan as much when we were there. But then once we started traveling more, we're like, man, this was such an incredible place to have kids, even though there were some obstacles, you know?
Totally. I mean, for sure, one of the most kid-friendly. We got to talk about the bathrooms real quick because...
Yes. We want a Japanese toilet in our house. Like your bum is never cold.
Yes.
Heated toilet seats, the cleanest thing ever, your little sound machine.
Exactly. I mean, the crazy thing is like in our Airbnbs, in the 7-Elevens, like it didn't matter where, it was it was the best bathroom experience I've ever had.
Like I would honestly dare say I would eat a snack that fell on the floor in one of those bathrooms. They are just like so clean and nice. Yeah. And like seriously, you don't think about the fact that sitting on a cold toilet seat is like the worst. And then you're sitting on a warm toilet seat in the middle of the like freezing cold of Japan. And then you're like, this is so nice. You go somewhere else. The first time you sit on a cold toilet seat, you're like, this is terrible.
Why
don't we have hot toilet seats?
I know. So I've got a boy, so we have 4 boys, right? And one of mine has, I don't know if I'm going to call it IBS, but he's got some bowel issues. Yes. And so it was really interesting. Part of our trip was thinking about if we got to make a quick escape to a bathroom, how does this process work? Exactly. And luckily, another whole conversation is about our food situation in America. But he really didn't have a flare up the entire time we were gone, but it was still on our minds. Yeah. So, but I remember Googling before we get to Japan, like, hey, what's the bathroom situation? And someone asked a specific on some forum, probably Reddit, and it was like, you're walking into the most bathroom friendly place in the world.
Bathroom utopia.
100% true. Yes.
Yes.
I don't know if they want that, like, as their tagline.
Tagline. I know. It's true, but it really is. And like, I was actually worried because I had read a lot of stuff that was like, oh my gosh, bathrooms are actually really hard to find. And I'm like, no, they were so accessible. Like everywhere we went there. And the nice thing is like, in America, like you're not using a train station bathroom. Like you walk into NYC and you are not using that. But like there were train station bathrooms everywhere that were so clean. They even had children's toilets in a lot of the train station bathrooms, like little toilets for kids. I'm like, this is just wild. If only they had that many garbage cans. You can't find a garbage can to save your life.
Yeah, we had a little bit. Melody had a backpack on, and it was like at the end of the day, you're just dumping it, and then
all the garbage.
Yeah, and then you get back to the Airbnb, and even their garbage situation is not straightforward.
So small. Yes. Well, and I always tease them, like, I think I gained the most weight in Japan because, like, my kids would get food, and then they'd be like, well, I don't want this anymore. And you're like, well, great, there's not a garbage can, so I guess I'm having thirst.
I guess I'm the garbage can.
Yeah, human garbage can in Japan, sadly.
That's basically parenting, but that's all right.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Okay, so before we get off the bathroom, so see if I miss anything. So noise cancellation, like you'd go into a 7-Eleven and there's like a privacy function, which is birds chirping, water, white
Yes.
noise.
Yep.
So then you've got the bidet functions that there's a male and a female version. I thought that
Yep.
was amazing. And
That's
then
super
Melody and I,
interesting. Yep.
I'm not sure it called it this, but there was a party button as we called it, and it did the whole function.
Yes. Yes. Everything. Yes. It's so funny. Well, and even like cause they're so clean and like clean conscious, like plastic wrap that you press the button and it just like moves so that there's new plastic wrap.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So
Just funny.
yeah. And then just the cleanliness. I mean, we can move on from that, but that's one of those things. Americans were weird about bidets, but after you've been to Europe or basically anywhere but the US, it's crazy that we don't embrace this. So
yes,
that's
just
my thoughts on bathrooms.
Don't let your 6-year-old in with you standing there, because I did get sprayed in the face with the bidet day one. Because he's like, like, oh yeah, right in the face. So don't do that. Know what you're walking into. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you land in Tokyo, right? And
yes. Yeah, so we went from Tokyo then we road tripped up to the mountainside and did like the little mountain area on the way to Osaka, which was really cool because that was very like Park City-esque. They have a lot of like the old wooden structure that used to be Tokyo is there. So like everything is hundreds of years old. Like we ate at this restaurant, like an udon noodle place that literally it was 150 years old. And the lady running it, family has owned it like the entire time it's been open. So we got a lot of like traditional true experiences in the mountains of Japan, and we really loved that. And then we moved from the mountainside into Osaka area. We did like Universal and all that stuff, which Universal for us, that was like we live near Universal and they're putting a lot now. So I don't know if I'll be able to say this in like a year, but that Universal is the best Universal I've ever been to. Like it was awesome. I don't know. Did you guys like it when you guys went? I know you guys did.
So our Japan experience is interesting because we flew into Sapporo and then went skiing for a week in Niseko and had a blast. Right. Land in Tokyo. Actually, we went straight to Osaka, and when we landed in Osaka, we all got the stomach and just a respiratory flu. And so our Osaka experience is interesting. It was really inside the house and then like venturing out to try to go find, some food or scavenge. But we ended up really liking it. It had that little, it was really cold and we were sick. So like we got to redo it. We got to go back again.
Yeah, you guys definitely do. I feel like we did it perfect because we were in Tokyo right at the end of blossom season. So that was really nice. And then like it started to get a little bit warmer. So our Universal experience was awesome. And it was not as crowded as Disneyland, because Disneyland in Tokyo was like, oh my gosh. First of all, there's like 4 children there. They're all adults.
I totally agreed.
Yes. And just like so busy. So Universal was kind of like a breath of fresh air for us as far as theme parks there, because there were still lots of kids. It like wasn't quite as busy. There were more options to like get on rides faster. So we loved that Universal. And then we got to eat American food.
Totally. And it was cheap.
Yes. So cheap.
Everything
like
inside
a box of popcorn's like $3.
Yeah. I remember we got like sandwiches, like pulled pork or something like that. And they're just American food. And we all ate for like $40. And I kept thinking, this is inside a park. That was a little weird.
Mm-hmm. Well, even like the Harry Potter, like we have the same like Harry Potter tavern meal here in Orlando, and we always eat that. So we actually ate that in the Universal there because they had it, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is like normal food, like it'll be so good. It was literally 1/3 the cost that what we pay in Orlando. So I'm like, you could literally like book your flight to Universal there and pay for your whole trip for cheaper probably than coming to Florida. So
we thought the same thing about skiing. I mean, that's an interesting thing. I think America just charges because they can. We can't. So I don't know.
Well, and I will say we found out that the yen was at like a 36-year low when we were there. I think that like we hit it at like the perfect spot because we had heard how expensive Japan was, and we got there and we're like, we're feeding a family of 4 every night, like 5-course meal for $20.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, it just is crazy. Yeah, we love that. We did the whole Universal. We did like the downtown Osaka area, which is like the cool lights and all the different food that you could eat there, which was amazing. We were not disappointed. Yes,
awesome.
Street food was incredible in Osaka. We loved that. So that was an awesome experience. Then we went and did Hiroshima and Miyajima Island, which Miyajima Island actually ended up being one of my favorite places in Japan too, because it's more of like a day island where tourists will just like get on a ferry and go for the day. And we stayed overnight for 2 nights there at an Airbnb. And like at 7 p.m., everyone leaves, like gone, because it's just this tiny island. But there's all of these really cool, like statues and temples, and the deer are everywhere there. They don't bow to you there, but they'll eat from your hands. Like they're everywhere for pictures. And we were able to like have this Japan experience with no crowds after 7 p.m. So we would like get our dinner, get our little lemon drinks, because that's what Hiroshima is known for, is their lemons, and like get our lemon treat. And then we would go walk through these empty streets. We're like, nowhere in Japan is empty. This is like so cool. So that was
I'm gonna have to get out a map and figure out where that is. How was it? Like really close to Hiroshima?
It was like, I want to say like a 2-hour drive, like hour and a half, 2-hour drive is to the ferry. And then you get on the ferry and it's like a 20-minute car ferry. The only thing is parking can be kind of hard. Like they tell you right off the bat, like your Airbnb won't have parking. You'll have to walk from the ferry to your Airbnb. But honestly, it was totally worth it because we found parking every night, even though they told us we probably wouldn't. And it was totally fine. But it just was so cool to like have this alone time in Japan, get all these pictures without people, because you're not getting that anywhere else in Japan, you know? So that was one of our favorites. And we did 2 or 3 days there. And then we did like downtown Hiroshima. We did all of like the museum and all of those sites, which honestly is kind of crazy. I don't know if it's like being a mom or like what happened as I became an adult, but like, and I'm like going to get emotional talking about it, but you go and you see that place and there is just like this energy when you walk up to this building and you're in this museum of just like, this is so tragic, you know? Like I remember just like feeling still, like it was such a stilling moment, and even being with my kids. And I think like one of the coolest opportunities about travel, right, is you get to have these really authentic conversations with your kids about the world and life. And sometimes it's really hard. I mean, especially with a 6-year-old. So walking through that museum with my 6-year-old and him like being like, Mommy, like what happened, you know, and what was going on right now in our time, like all these wars and things that were happening, getting to be like, buddy, you know, sometimes bad people do bad things and people fight, and it's really tragic, and lives are lost and things are lost. And we got to kind of talk to him about this concept of war and the world and what happens and what causes it. And just like, that was a really sacred experience for me, I think, as a parent. And then to be able to walk through that with my kids and see that history and feel like you are making an impact on a generation in a small way by being like, this doesn't have to be the answer. You know, like I hope that one day this is not the answer because we make better choices. So
I love that. I feel like I can feel I had a really similar experience, and I you're right, that opportunity. I don't know what I was expecting on the year, but what stands out to me in my journals and things like that is just those conversations I had with Melody or with my kids, or just the feelings I had in some of those places that not everything's rosy. Not everything has been rosy. We're so blessed and lucky to be alive right now. I remember Anders asked me a question. Anders is our 6-year-old. Dad, like, what are those little shoes? You know, why are they showing the little shoes? And I was like, like, you know, just school children. And
it's like these, the same age as your kids, you know, and just like you just are in that moment with your very alive, vibrant children that are getting to have this amazing experience and are so blessed to be in the position that they are because of where they were born and the opportunities they were given. And it just like hits you, you know, like you feel so grateful. You almost feel guilty, you know, in some sense of a way that like, this is your life. But it just, like you said, it's just an awesome experience to be able to share that and have those feelings with your young kids, you know?
As you're walking up, you know, like on the grounds near the Hiroshima Museum, they have little cranes everywhere, you know, paper mache cranes. And I don't remember what they actually called it, but like the Hiroshima promise or the commitment that was like never again. Like we can't do this again. We can't drop these type of warheads, you know, that have so much impact. And I've thought a lot about that. Like, you know, you're right. There are so much there's so much going on in the world right now, but we have to commit to not doing this again. Like, I know there's conflict, but I've just walked out of there with that feeling like I can pledge to be behind that. Like, we can't be doing this to each other.
It's just like this sense of humanity. And I think too, like one of the biggest things with traveling, especially when you're at places with different types of people, with different cultures, is you just see how good the world is. You know, like I think that was one of our biggest takeaways is there are so many beautiful, wonderful, amazing people in the world. And I think that as a society, we kind of let these few people with these bad intentions get in the way of that, where it's like, no, there are so many people that are just like you and me that are just like living their lives and are good people, you know?
Totally. I had a conversation with a friend yesterday that we were kind of talking about this, that in this election season, there's so much bickering and you feel one side or the other and you get pushed into this opposition. And then I remember some of these experiences and I kind of have to just like, there's a lot of good people. And you look at the innocence in your kids and my little guys, like their eyes. It's our job as parents. We have to create a sense of like hope that everything's going to be okay. Well, there's really good people. Remember this. Instead of it's so easy to get sucked into everything's dark and dreary and, you know, the world's falling apart.
Yeah.
It's not true. It's just not. There's so much goodness.
Yeah. I agree. It's just crazy.
Okay, so you finished Hiroshima, you did your island, and then bounced?
Yes. And then we went to Fukuoka was our last place that we went because that was the best place to get on a flight and go out. And that was actually pretty fun. It was just like a normal suburban area, but it had, I don't know if you were surprised by this, but Japan, because bread is like a dessert to them, it's not like something they eat all the time. Their baked goods were phenomenal. And we found some of the best bakeries in Fukuoka. So I think our Fukuoka experience was just bakery bouncing. That's like what we did for 3 full days. And then we flew out and we flew into Thailand from there. So
I love it. Okay, so I guess we'll bounce before we jump out of Japan. I agree. Yes. We had some of the best food experiences and some of the worst food experiences.
Yes. Like the worst thing I think is because there is such that language barrier that like your conception of like what belongs in a fridge and what doesn't and what theirs is, you know? So like you're like, okay, this bread's been sitting out all day long. There's no way it has meat or cheese in it. Like this has to be like a cream filling. Like, no, this is like the most disgusting, fermented, nasty meat or cheese you've ever eaten inside the most decadent bread. And you just took a bite of this thinking you were getting cream and now you're going to vomit.
Yeah, exactly.
Our experience a lot, you know?
Did you try was it okonomi? I'm going to say that's so wrong.
Octopus?
Yeah, the octopus balls, the fried octopus balls.
Awful.
I'm so glad.
So good.
We had to try it. And again, my cousin that went on her mission there, she told us we had to give it a shot. And I was like, I got him. I got the boys all excited. I'm a sushi eater and most of us are. We go down to, and I was just like, that was the worst thing. It was so bad.
Terrible. Like it's crazy because like some of our favorite candies, some of our favorite ice creams, like our favorite treats, like I had the best ramen I have literally ever eaten in my entire life in Japan. Like so good. But then you have these offshoot things that, I mean, those octopus balls look like they're going to be delicious. They're covered in sauce. They're fried. You're like, yeah, this is a good choice. And then you bite into it and you're like, no.
I've made a mistake. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So
wild.
Go to Thailand. I got a million questions. So let's move through and then we'll come back.
Sorry. Yeah.
No, it's my fault. We can talk for hours.
I know. It's so fun. There really is so much. But, so we go to Thailand and we start in Bangkok, which we loved. That, like, I would honestly retire in Bangkok. We loved it that much. They had like the most phenomenal grocery stores I have ever seen in my entire life. The most phenomenal malls. The temples there are just like out of this world. They're like crazy beautiful. The architecture, there was a lot of fun things I felt like there for our kids to do as well that they really enjoyed. And then like the mangoes in Thailand, I don't think that I have had mangoes anywhere in the world better than there. So lived off of that and sticky rice. So we loved that. We went from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, which is like the mountain area. The highlight of this entire trip for me, I love elephants. Like I love them. And we found a sanctuary for them where they take elephants that were like in circuses or like mistreated or riding camps, and they bring them and they give them a home. And like you get to walk along the mountain paths with them and you get to like feed them and bathe them. And that was like the most amazing experience ever. And our son loved it. Like it was one of those moments of like, okay, I can't think too much into this, but he's like diving into this like lake with the elephants that I'm like, there's poop everywhere that I don't
Sure.
even want to know what's in here, but just having the time of his life. And that was one of the coolest experiences. Getting to be up close with those animals and how beautiful and amazing they are was incredible. So
Yeah.
that was a highlight for us. And Chiang Mai has a ton of expats, which we didn't realize. So there are a lot of Americans that live in Chiang Mai. So that was kind of interesting because there was a lot of Americanized, like westernized things there from that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was burning season while we were there. So I highly recommend not going during burning season because yourself and all of your luggage and everything you brought will smell like campfire for a
Okay. Gotcha.
So don't go during burning season, but still an incredible place. We loved that. After that, we went to, is it Phuket? It's Phuket, right?
Yep.
Or Phuket. I never can remember how to say it.
I have a shirt that says it. And when I got home, I went to like a football practice for one of my boys. And one of the coaches came up and he's like, so how are we saying that word? Like, I was like, good question, because we've all said it. I think it's Phuket.
Yes, yeah. So we went there. We loved that. We actually did like a private villa and our family and friends came and stayed with us there. And that was really cool. It was right on the ocean. We just like hung out there, did the beach. There's this place there that's like one of the world's have to visit places. And it's like a light up parade and like amusement park.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they do the show and stuff. Oh my gosh. My kids loved that. It was incredible. Like it was a cheap version of Disney, but just spectacular. And they loved every minute of it. So that was so fun.
So I don't know what our problem was. We can talk about Thailand and, Thailand was a pretty sacred place for us. Like,
yes.
Melody's mom passed away while we were there.
Yeah.
And so it was just this moment of like, we had a lot. So we left our stuff there. We flew home for 2 weeks and came back, and coming back weirdly felt like home. Like, I don't know. It was like coming back and we processed a lot. It ended up being just a quiet, the whole, we were Chiang Mai, every part of Thailand. And I don't know if it's the Buddhist culture or if it's our state of mind, was a really, really decompressing, calm experience for us.
No, it definitely was. And we still to this day, like Thai people are like the kindest people we've ever met. Like everywhere we went, like they always like, my daughter's kind of antisocial and everywhere we went, they wanted to hold her and like play with her. And like the little like maid lady that was at the villa would braid her hair every day, like, and bring her clips. And like, even at our hotel we stayed at, we'd go to this restaurant in Bangkok at the hotel every day. They would bring toys for my kids because they knew they were coming. Like, it just is so like you said, they're just so kind. They're so peaceful. And you really like feel that when you're there. And it is so nice. It's just so like relaxing to be around that and uplifting, I
totally agree. I was just going to say our villa that we stayed in was literally across the street from that place in Phuket, the carnival. And we didn't go. We didn't. I know. That's what I was like, I don't know what. And I think it's just because we were there for about a month in a beach. The little city was called Kamala Beach. And that's right where that is. Yeah. And we would walk past it and I was like, we got to go one of these days. But we would end up, I don't know, just being out at the beach all night. And it just never happened. So I guess we got to go back. That's okay.
Yeah, you guys do. It's so fun. Honestly, like, I think our biggest thing was balance with our kids, like trying to find things that like we as adults love and also things that like they truly just enjoy in the moment. And I feel like that was one of those, like my husband and I probably wouldn't have gone, but we were like, okay, the kids have been at the beach all week and like the beach is so fun for them, but like we have a beach here. So I feel like after a while, they're kind of like, okay,
what else?
We're done. Yeah. So that was fun to be able to like do something different. And I always love doing things that like is a local thing. Cause that is like, that's where the locals take their kids to like go on a night out or celebrate a birthday or all those things. So it's fun to get to be in that culture and like see that side of things too.
I love it. Okay. So Phuket, this to Singapore?
Yeah.
Or did you stick?
Yeah, we went we went from Phuket to Singapore. Singapore is amazing. It's like the coolest city in the world. Zootopia is the only way I can describe Singapore. Like they do such a good job, like plants everywhere. And they do a lot of like preservation work and things with the environment and everything that they do, like all of the cool places that there are to see, like the gardens and things. It's all about teaching us about the planet and like how we can better take care of it and why they do what they do, which actually they have all the plants to help with photosynthesis and oxygenation and to keep their air healthy, which I'm like, duh, like,
this is
why
good.
don't we do that,
Yeah.
So we love that. Food in Singapore is amazing. Again, just like, I mean, you can probably agree with this. Asian malls are just like an animal of their own. Like
Off the hook. Yes.
we don't know what malls are in America. Like they are insane. So, I mean, Japan,
Like we're seeing this,
Singapore,
the death.
Thailand.
Yeah. That we're seeing like the slow death of malls in
Of
the United
malls.
States. And I'm like,
Yes.
the rest of the country is either way behind or they skipped over us because the mall
Yes.
situation everywhere. I mean, Thailand, Japan, Dubai just
Yes.
incredible. So yeah, I'm with
Yes.
you. I'm with you.
Just like, I mean, you go to the food court and you're getting like 5-star meals on real plates and
Yeah.
every restaurant you can imagine and kid zones and arcades and like just crazy. So we also loved that about Singapore. That was really fun. I'm trying to think what else. We were only in Singapore for a week because a lot of people told us it's a very small area. So you will get bored if you're there for longer than a week. So we did that for a week. And then after Singapore, we flew to South Africa, which
That's
was
right.
a 10-hour flight. And again, chaos. Our flight was at 1 a.m. and we're so dumb. We were so tired. We did not put 2 and 2 together. And we got there at midnight on the 19th when our flight left at 1 a.m. on the 19th, thinking, like
Gotcha.
just the mix up.
Yep.
So we missed our flight and they only have one flight a day. It goes from Singapore to South Africa. So we got stranded in Singapore for 3 extra days. But one of the coolest hotels ever, it's the Cells Resort, is there. And we loved that. So we were like, okay, this sucks, but also like we get to stay at this resort for 3 more days. So
Yeah, not bad.
we're okay. Yeah. So that was good. But yeah, we flew into South Africa. South Africa was wow for me.
Okay.
We ended up going straight to Cape Town because we were supposed to be in Johannesburg for 2 days and then into Cape Town, but we missed all that obviously. So we flew straight into Cape Town. Cape Town is beautiful. It has some of the most amazing hikes ever. It is also where we learned the hard way the first time. If you ever ask someone outside of America for a good hike, they're going to tell you this hike is safe and easy, and it is 100% not. Like
Safe or
their
easy.
idea, yes, like their idea of a family-friendly hike is like holding on to literal chains and climbing up ladders and like cliffs, and you're just like, okay, so this is a family-friendly hike. What is not
Yeah,
a family-friendly hike, Like, it's just wild. But yeah, they're very outdoorsy there. It's really cool. The ocean is very different there. It's really cold, the ocean out there, but it was fun. We got to put on like warm wetsuits and go and do the kelp farms there, and snorkel it, which was
Those pictures looked
actually
ridiculous. Yeah.
it's phenomenal. Yeah. So that was really cool. I'm trying to think what else we did in Cape Town. Cape Town is just like scenically one of the most beautiful beachside mountain areas that you can go to. Also, we ended up finding out Cape Town is far safer than a lot of parts of South Africa because then we had to fly into Johannesburg to go onto our safari.
Okay.
And the first sign you see as you're leaving the airport is arm your car, arrive alive. And
oh my gosh.
you're like, okay, cool. So
Arrive
we kind of
alive.
knew, yes. And we kind of knew going into it was going to be scary because we had to do some legal paperwork for my husband's business while we were in Cape Town. And the attorney that was there helping us was like, don't leave your cell phone on your lap in your cars. Don't have your purse showing in your cars. Don't let your kids have iPads in the cars because if you stop at a stoplight, they will smash your window and grab them.
your stuff. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were like, cool. But I think like the most mind-boggling part about South Africa for me is that it is so like rural and humbling and like people live in shacks on one side of the street. And then you have like these pristine, magnificent, beautiful city areas. But everywhere you go, you're going to run into a 12-foot cement wall with electric wiring on the outside. Every business, every home, like you just look at this area and you're like, what are you like trying to keep out? Like, is it animals? Cause it seems like it, like it just was really crazy. And it was the one place in the entire world that we went that I actually felt less safe because I felt like everywhere else I felt more safe than I even do in America, you know, but there I was like, wow, like I was really worried about where my kids were, where our belongings were. They had check-ins at the hotel in Johannesburg. So like if you had your do not disturb on for 12 hours, they would do safety calls in
Oh
your
my
hotel.
gosh.
And this was like a 5-star, like nice hotel. They don't have knives in any of the hotels or Airbnbs.
Oh my gosh.
It is just like, it's another world. And it was very like humbling and just crazy to see that people live like that, you know? Like I have too much anxiety. I could never live there. I would probably die because
Yeah.
it's terrifying. But
Get back down to Cape Town.
yes, but like the craziest thing too is like the people there were so nice. Like everyone we interacted with, like whether it was hotels or restaurants or anywhere, they were so kind. And so you're just like, the vibe is so confusing, but it was crazy. But we then flew on they do like a little tiny plane from Johannesburg to the Milwaukee Reserve, which is where we went. One of the things that we learned in planning this is our daughter, who is 3, could not go to a lot of the reserves because even though it was not malaria season, they will not allow children under the age of 6 to enter a malaria zone in the reserves. So we had to get kind of creative. This is the one part of the trip that I did end up hiring a travel agent for because I was making phone calls, I was emailing, I was finding nowhere that would like take us with our daughter. So she contacted this travel agent that specialized in family safaris. And she was able to find me this place that was amazing. It was a little bit different. We had to do our own drive. Like we couldn't be with other people that were staying because if Charlie was to get a little cranky or sad or wild, like for safety concerns, they would have to turn around, obviously, because wild animal.
Yeah.
And they didn't want to inconvenience other guests. So we went on this safari, not really knowing what to expect other than like, wow, we hope our kids are good, you know?
Yeah.
But it was incredible. It was amazing. It was one of our favorite experiences of the whole trip. Our daughter loves animals and it was so fun. The reserve that we went to fed us incredibly. We had a private chef that actually fed us all week and they would even make little like snack bags for the kids to take on the drive. Yeah, it was amazing. You wake up to fresh pastries every morning before your drive. Then they feed you like a 5-course breakfast. Like you're just fed impeccably. Where we stayed at in our building, Elephant, there was a watering hole right outside of
I remember these pictures. This was incredible, Aubri.
And our first day we were there, my son's like, man, there's an elephant. I'm like, there's not. Like, and I look and there is an entire like herd of elephants walking down right in front and the babies and they're drinking out of the water. And we're literally like 2 feet away from them with like a balcony and they're right there. Like if I leaned over, I could touch them. Like that is how close these wild animals are. And it was wild. It was the craziest experience to get to do that and see that outside of like a zoo setting, you know?
Is that plus the Thailand, what your kids will talk about or what are the
100%. They talk about it all the time. Like, and it's just so funny. Like my daughter will name all the animals she saw and it was so cool. And they got to see like baby cubs. The lion cubs. They had some lion cubs that they were able to see. And like we were driving, these Jeeps have like open sides, right? They're like open air Jeeps. They have a cover so you're out of the sun. But our safari guide was this lady and she was so funny and so nice, but she loved surprising us with things. So she would get calls over the radio of like where the animals were because they kind of like dispatch each other to help each other find them. And so she had gotten dispatched and we were like, what's going on? You know, and our son had been like, lions are my favorite animal. I have to see a lion. So she had been like looking for 3 days for lions. So she gets this call. She doesn't say like what we're going to see. We're thinking maybe it's a cheetah because they had talked about that prior. Well, we pull up and she's talking on the thing and she goes, hey, I'm going to cross the ravine. And we're like, okay. And she goes, okay, look to your right. I kid you not, as we were driving, there is a lion, not even half of a foot from my 3-year-old on the side of the car, just walking next to us. And he is massive. He is like the leader of the pride, like Mufasa. I am literally like, okay, don't panic. I'm just going to put my arm around you because I don't trust you not to fall out of this Jeep right now.
It become lion bait. right?
Yes, yes, but it's just wild. And they told us that they don't see these vehicles as people or anything. It's just an item in the wilderness because they're pretty much raised around them. And so to them, it's like a tree. Like it's just this thing.
Just part of the landscape, right?
Yes. And it's not unless something or someone falls out of that thing that then they know what you are. Safety wise, that was a little nerve wracking, but it was seriously phenomenal. And it was kind of cool because like we would track the animals down. Like she would show my kids the walking path that the animals were taking and their prints. And she would tell us how you could tell if they were new and how they couldn't. And so it became like a game for our kids because I was kind of worried they would get bored just like sitting in a game car all day. But it wasn't. It was like, okay, we're hunting animals. Like, what are we finding? Like, and she would tell them all these facts about the animals. And it was just like an incredible experience. And yeah, I think it definitely tops like top two experiences for my kids, especially.
I love it. How did you, I mean, we'll keep going, but like, how did you, but everybody has their own way of doing it. How did you decide where you were going? How did you make kind of your path that you made?
So I had specific places that I knew I wanted to go and Judd knew he wanted to go. Only two that we were like, or actually three we were dead set on was Japan and South Africa for me. That's always been like my bucket list and my dream. And then France because we wanted to be there during the Olympics. Sweet. So we kind of I did a lot of research before going out. Like we talked about weather, like when is monsoon season? When is burning season? Like you have to know all these things because that's going to affect obviously like what you're able to do, safety. And then also I looked like the logistics of flights because we do have small kids. So I was like, I want to do as little of long flights as possible just to like make it a better experience for them. So, and then also where can you get a flight out of? Like a good example of that is when we were in Japan. Did you guys ever eat at the Turkish ice cream stands?
Yes, actually, yeah, they were everywhere, but yes.
Yes. And they're so funny. They were so funny. My kids loved them. And we were like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know like turkey was we didn't really know what turkey was. And that was our first experience with it. Well, we booked everything 30 days in advance, so we didn't get stuck somewhere. Or like if we had to go home, we weren't like out the money for it. So when we got to South Africa, we were looking at how to get into the Europe area. And one of the best, most direct flights and the cheapest was into Turkey. And we had never like intended on going to Turkey. We were like, oh my gosh, those turkey ice cream dudes are so funny. Like I bet that would be a fun place to visit. And so we ended up flying into Turkey and spending 2 weeks in Turkey. And that again was such a cool experience. That was one of our favorite places that we went on the trip too. And that was not intentional or planned, but it gave our kids like a really awesome exposure to the Muslim culture, which I really liked. And I do really enjoy like the history of Muslim culture and their temples and like how all that plays out. But then it was also very westernized. Like they had amazing food. And again, the people are just hilarious. Like they are jokesters. Like everything they do is a joke. They think everything's funny. Like, it was a party. Turkey was a party. So
is that probably your biggest pivot from, like here's your plan here. And the Turkey was kind of the one you didn't know was going to happen like that.
Was our random because our plan was to go straight into Montenegro. But if you ever tried to book a flight into Montenegro, it is actually not easy at all. Like it's really hard to find flights to get into it, no matter where you are. And it was really expensive. So we were like, okay, we'll just do this. And then we'll go straight from Turkey to Montenegro because Montenegro is where Turkish people go for their holidays.
Gotcha. So let's talk about, bet we can just like Google Translate.
Yes.
How did you go about so if you're interested in weather or toilet friendly cities or these things, what resources, how did you find stuff to give you the answers?
I would honestly say mostly Google. And then it's such a girl thing, but Pinterest. Like I use Pinterest for a lot of things because I think going into this, you're like, wow, nobody does this. This is like a new thing. Like we're going to be some of the first. And then you start like Pinteresting and you're like, no. Lots of
people
families have done this, So that was kind of cool because there's a lot of blogs that you can find of like people, they talk about literally everything from like what clothes they brought, what shoes they did for their kids, like what medications they weren't able to find, like what suitcase brands held up the best throughout their trip, locations that they felt were the most kid friendly. They talk about weather, like literally there are blueprints on Pinterest and Google of these families that have these blogs and even Instagram. Like I used Instagram for a lot, So.
Did you, mean, this might be the millennial in me, but like Facebook groups, I would join. I still am on all these like Thailand
Yes.
expats, or I would be,
Yeah.
like Reddit forums, but it's amazing the type of
Yes.
information you can get. And what I
Yes.
love about it is that those are kind of living, breathing places to find information.
Yes.
When we were leaving, our plan was to go from Thailand to Japan to Australia. And we had kind of said, oh, we're just going to go spend time in Sydney. And I had wanted to get to Cairns. One, it was easy to fly from Tokyo to Cairns. That was pretty straightforward.
Yes.
So I asked a Reddit forum, like, should we do this? Our kids we love the outdoors, but we were just told there's crocodiles and sharks and we shouldn't do it. And people just over the top, like, you guys absolutely have to come here. And we would have I think we would have connected through Cairns to get to Sydney had we not asked some of those questions on the forum. So I loved it.
Yeah, because it's great because like you said, there's all this information out there about things. Because I mean, like I said, I was checking under my pillows for spiders every night in Australia. Like, I think that there are a lot of scary things and I think you have to be careful. But like the number one thing I think we realized with traveling is like, usually if a local's doing it, you're okay. Like,
agreed.
Like they know, you know what I mean? And it's just about being smart. Like that was one of the biggest, like, I don't know if you've heard that word in Australia a lot, but they always said, be croc wise, like just aware of your surroundings. And I think that helped me because I had so much anxiety about the crocodiles because in Florida we have alligators and like we do get in lakes and stuff with them. But when you see a crocodile in person, they are literal like dinosaurs.
Yes.
They're massive. And so scary. Like, I'm like, these make alligators look like bunnies. So it's so terrifying. So I think that's my biggest concern. But yeah, it's never what you think. So it's good to have like those connections to people who are there, who've had that experience that you can kind of relate to with that.
Okay. So Reddit forums, Facebook groups, Pinterest. That's the new one. I didn't even check. You're right. Maybe. And I'm sure Melody
it's the girl in me. Yeah.
So then, and then you're right, just Google blogs that people put up.
Yeah.
I thought that I would have more people that I knew in my network that could give me, and that didn't end up being, like a few people here and there would give us a suggestion, but it was kind of fun just exploring too. So once you kind of got there, we ended up just, I don't know, we got pretty good at just exploring.
Yes. Well, and it was even kind of nice because when I very first reached out to Melody, it's because my best friend, who is her husband's your cousin, said like, hey, my cousins are doing this. I know you want to do this. Like, she would be a great resource to reach out to because I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing for school. Like, I don't know what we should pack. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just kind of this like bubbling idea in our heads that we were having, but I like couldn't get myself fine-tuned or like on board with it. So then when I like messaged Melody and she was like, well, this is what we're doing for school. This is what we're doing. And it's awesome. This is the hard parts. This is the good parts. Like, she was just so open and honest with me about everything. I felt like, okay, I can like totally do this,
And maybe that's it. I heard this term this week. You have to tell Judd this because I was thinking about, I might just message him, but there's this, it's called micro retirements, right?
Yeah.
So it's in the Wall Street Journal. I think that's where I read it, but it's this, people are not going to wait till they're 60 to spend some of their money to live, to do some of this stuff. And, there's people that are taking backpacking trips through, different coastline trails or something. And so they said, instead of maybe you take it at 30, maybe you take it at 40, maybe you take one at 50. So you have 3 little micro retirements. I didn't know that's what I was doing, but that's 100% what happened. There was a point in my career that I was like, I have to do something different. I have to take a break. I have to go experience something different to reset for the next phase of my career. And this is what we chose. So,
yes. So do you know who Jay Shetty is?
Yeah.
So he has a podcast and it's so funny because I feel like this was so perfect, but his podcast comes out about like modern society, right? And he's talking about how like when we were farmers, we would have a season of work and a season of rest. And he's like, we don't really do that anymore. Like everything in life is just like work, go, go, go. But like it really is so essential for our well-being to get back to our ancestral roots of like a season of work and a season of rest. And it makes us more productive. It gives us a better idea of what we want out of life. Like it just is so essential to have these extended periods of time where you can kind of like look inward and reassess your life and where you're going and what you're doing. And people think that that's going to hold them back, but it actually projects them forward and makes them better at what they're doing. And you have a clearer mindset. You're not as tired. And I heard that podcast like literally 2 months before we were supposed to leave. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like this is just reaffirming so much to me. Like, yes, mini retirements, like go and work hard, but like you deserve more than 7 days a year to process your life and what you want, you know?
Mm-hmm. So I worked in kind of corporate medical sales for 15 years.
Yeah.
I told Melody, like, as I was thinking about that, I don't think I took more than 7 days off in a row for 15 years.
Yeah.
And we have great pictures and family memories, but this was a total different experience. And
Yes.
we can get into kind of motivations, but like, tell me about the first conversation that you and Judd had where, like, can you remember what that conversation looked like? We're like, should we do this? And who was it? Let me see if I can
totally guess, but I think you know who it was.
It's gotta be Judd.
It was, yeah.
Okay,
it was 100% Judd.
Yeah, you threw me for a loop there. I thought maybe it was you.
Yeah, no, it was Judd. We were on a date night one night. And so like kind of a backstory, we moved to Florida 6 years ago and we literally started this company from the ground up. We started it in a tiny apartment building with no staff. Like I was the only customer service agent. Judd was like running this company. We had a few sales reps, just mayhem from the beginning. We ended up merging this company, and getting like a buyout basically, essentially. And Judd became CSO over that company 2.5 years after we started.
Okay.
We were thinking that was going to be like kind of a step back. Like this is cool. Like we don't have as much liability. We're not in the like complete building phase anymore. Like this is going to be awesome. It ended up being the polar opposite where he was still working like 90-hour work weeks, but now he was traveling because it was a national company instead of just Florida. So he was always in Utah where the headquarters was, or California or Texas or North Carolina or New York, wherever the offices were that he needed to be. So we just were like never seeing him. And a lot of stuff started happening with solar and the market, and it just started getting really crazy. And it was like draining the life out of not only him, but I feel like our family. You know, like I always tell Judd, I'm like, it's kind of sad because after this trip, I get to see you for who you are again, because he was kind of like a shell of himself the last 2 years before we did this, you know? So we were on a date night one night and he's like, I know this is so crazy, but he's like, I think I might quit my job. And I'm like, hold up. Talking about, and he's like, and that wasn't even it. And he goes, and I think I want to quit my job and I think we should travel the world. And I'm just like, no. I'm like, our kids are in school now, like all this stuff. And it's kind of funny because we have this giant whiteboard in our room that we call the vision board that we've always had. And we always write like short-term, long-term, 5-year, 10-year goals. And we have it in our room as ugly as it is because it's like visual, you know? And on there, it even says like be a full-time world traveler was one of Judd's 15 to 20 year goals.
Oh, you gave me the chills. I love it.
Yes, but it just like, he's really good at visualizing things and just like making that a fruition. And I think it's always been in the back of his mind that he really wanted to do this. It just wasn't a realization of how soon he wanted it. But I think that he wanted to have purpose. He wanted to kind of like have this time, be together as a family and reconnect and be a dad, because he really wasn't a dad, you know, like I think my daughter was a year and a half old the first time he put her to bed because he just worked so much. And one of the things that he said about this trip was like, wow, I actually get to have a relationship with my kids and they know who I am as a person. And that is all he wanted out of that trip. You know, like the experiences aside, and as amazing as it was about the root reason why we were doing it, of like having relationships with each other and our kids that are healthy and better than they were. So it just,
I love wild. That. I can relate so much with it.
Yeah.
Kind of burnout's not the right question, but it's a season thing. It's like the season of grind and be so inundated with work that it was like, this can't go on forever. I need a winter season where I can breathe.
It's just it's not sustainable. And that's what we talked about a lot, is like, it's not sustainable. And yes, it's kind of crazy to just like pick up and leave and like go into another chaotic situation. But I think for us, and like the way that Judd and I both operate is like, we both like to kind of go, but in our own way. So this trip we were able to kind of take a reset, take a step back, but still have something to do and have a purpose behind it, you know? And I think that was kind of the big thing for us. We still wanted to have purpose. We still wanted to be able to do what we wanted to do, but also like have that time away to kind of reset and reevaluate what we wanted from life from here on out.
I don't think that's not fair. I don't know of a better way to ask those questions than to get out of the craziness of everyday American life.
Yeah.
And so I can totally relate. I think that, finding space to even ask those questions of what do I want to do. I'm in this place right now. I don't know what Judd's doing for work now and what his next plans are.
Yeah.
I'm still in the kind of the there's a lot of balls up in the air and I don't know where they're going to land.
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is I'm not stressed. I don't have this like panic about me that I think if a year ago before this trip, I think I would feel if I found myself without a job, I think I would be panicking. And it's so interesting because I'm like, I got this. It's going to work out. I got time. I get, not setting aside how blessed and, lucky I am for where we are. It's not lost on me that that's a privilege, but I'm like, so we planned for this and we worked really hard to get us a place set up where, I don't know, where we can kind of take that chaos and be like, I'm thriving in it still. So I love
100%. Yeah. So it was great, but
Okay. So you have the conversation, you start mapping it out. How did you think about one of the questions I get all the time and we can talk about our experience, but like, is how did you budget for it? How did you put a total number around what this thing is going to cost you?
Well, we've kind of talked about this, but basically what happened was when we merged our company, we got bought out. So like they paid for the business that we had built at that point, which was a nice amount of money. And then we were able to take that money and invest it into a bunch of real estate and stock that was actually giving us funds every month that we would live off of. So we took our monthly budget that we spent at home each month and we added a little bit more to that because we were like,
good move.
We want to like enjoy ourselves. One of the biggest things that a lot of the people that were in the same situation as us when their companies got bought out, they bought like $10 million homes and Ferraris and Lambos and like stadium suites at the Cowboys stadium. You know what I mean? Like they spent their money just very differently than us. And so we had this lump sum of money that we were like, okay, what are we going to get the most out of? And I think our biggest thing was like, we would rather buy an experience than buy an item, as nice as it is. So we were going to go out and just like live our best life. Like we definitely had moments where we were like, okay, we got to be frugal. Like we're only going to spend this much each week on where we're staying. But then there were weeks like when we were in Singapore or on our safari where it was like, hey, this is going to be expensive, but like this is what we worked so hard for. So we're going to enjoy it. So I think that our biggest thing was just like, okay, realistically, I don't even know if I want to throw all this out. We spent about $30,000 a month. That was for food, for what we did, where we stayed, the cars that we rented, like any visas we had to pay for. Like that was about what we stayed in. Some months it was way, way less. And then other months we went a little bit over if we did things like the safari that we did, because for a week of that, I think we paid like $14,000 for that. So that was expensive, you know?
So the way I think about this is you guys were out for 8 months, 7 months?
Yeah, seven and a half.
Okay. So you think about like, okay, let's just take that at the number, like 210,000, 30,000 times 7 months.
Yes.
That's a lot of money, but also like, I don't know that like everything that changed in your hearts and how you look at the world and the photos and memories that will kind of keep, I don't know, worth it all day long,
It totally was. And for us, like, I think the best thing that we came home for is we have a more minimalistic mentality. And I think that was one of the coolest things that we took from that trip too, is like our kids had like 5 toys each, like small toys that had to fit in their backpacks, like a book. And that was it. And they were solid for 7.5, 8 months, like we had 5 outfits and our clothes looked a little ratty towards the end, but it was like, we just saw that outside of America, they live with so much less. Like they aren't as consumerist mindset as we are. Like they don't buy. Like they're not buying for their happiness, and they do spend more money on experiences. And I feel like at the end of the day, we're never going to regret that, because we will have this experience with us for the rest of our lives. Like a house can burn down, money can be lost, but like the memories that you make as a family and like the opportunities that you were able to give your kids to kind of broaden their mindset and horizon about life is priceless. Like you can't put a price on that.
It's interesting because like, same, we were living that, we each had a carry-on. So we each had a carry-on, and then we had one check-in size bag that actually we carried like our boys' lacrosse sticks and just some extra gear that we just needed. So we had there's 6 of us. So we had each 6 carry-ons plus one check-in bag that we had. And that necessitates like a whole different way of thinking about things. Like we would take you're right. Like the shirts and things that we would buy along the way means something else has to go. And so you kind of get used to this, Melody, like, I remember it'd almost be like a thank you so much little shirt. Like, you've done so much for me, but I don't have room for you anymore. Like, goodbye. And you set that aside.
Yeah. And it kind of was like sad. Like, you're throwing these things away and you're like, oh, this is kind of sad. Like, you form an attachment to the things that you have,
I only have 5 of you. And
yeah.
so now at home, you got a closet full of clothes. And what's interesting is, like, I still find myself only wearing this little section of it.
Yes. Well,
what's
like
nice,
when we were, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Well, when we were packing, like, people were like, how do you pack? Like, how do you decide this? And I really started, like, paying attention to what I wear, what the kids wear, like, what we feel the most comfortable in, and things that I knew with, like, for certainty that we would wear. Because I think we all have, like, clothing items that, like, we like, but, like, we're not super attached to. And then there's, like, clothing items, like you said, like, you gravitate towards that a lot. So I just chose, like, the items that we did gravitate towards that we would be the most comfortable and it was the most functional, could be layered. Like, that was kind of my get-go. And so even, like you said, coming home, you're like, I still wear those clothes.
Yeah, because it's my jam. Like. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just funny.
What's one thing that you would tell people to throw in your bag if they were going to do something 3 months, 6 months, a year, if they were going to do some full-time travel with their family? What's one thing that you would say, throw in the bag?
I do too. I have
you can do too.
Okay. Children's Motrin.
Good.
Because my kids did get a couple of fevers and like Japan especially, you're like reading the things that they put in medication and then you're Googling and America's telling you like, hey, don't give this to your kid. But then Japanese people do give it to their kid and you're like, what do you know? So definitely children's ibuprofen because I feel like it's essential when you're traveling sickness. Don't try and find medication other places. And then the other thing is we had this adapter that had an adapter end for every place we were going, but it was like a full power outlet that had multiple spaces. And then it even had a space just like the iPhone chargers. We literally used that so much. Like it was our most prized possession on that trip because without that, you are disconnected. You have nothing. Like we have no iPads for the kids or headphones for them while we travel. We have no cell phones. We have no curling irons. We have nothing, So I feel like that was actually ended up being our most valuable item that we carried.
You're going to have to send me a link so we can add it.
Yes.
Conversation.
It was amazing. That was actually, I found it on one of the travel mom vlogs that I looked. She was like, this is awesome. Just take it. And so yeah, that was one item we used every day.
And I'm sure you could find an adapter in each different country that you could, like, if let's say you lose it.
Yeah, you totally gonna find.
But you're not gonna find the one thing that does it all.
No,
save so much space.
And like trying to figure out where to buy things. Like I don't know if you noticed this, but like they have a store for everything.
Yeah.
There's not like one store that sells everything.
There's no Target.
It's like
there's no Walmart.
No, it's very specific. Like this is a grocery store. This is like a self-hygiene store. This is an electronics store. And so like just finding anything is already hard enough. So like just make it easier for yourself and just bring that with you. Yeah.
I love it.
So
okay, tell me, we'll kind of get wrapping up here, but tell me if you're talking to a friend that calls you and said, I'm inspired and I want to do this. What more on a philosophical, like tell them not logistically, but like tell them give me some advice.
Oh man, I feel like this is going to get real and raw. And I feel like I owe everyone this because Melody was real and raw with me. But I think like the biggest thing is like get comfortable with not knowing who you are or how comfortable you are in your relationships because I think that like we're so used to who we are at home with like all of these outside things that make us who we are. And then you're in this place where nobody knows you. You maybe don't have access to all the things, especially as like women to like take care of yourself or like what you're used to in your routine. And you kind of go through this identity crisis of like, oh man, like who am I? You know what I mean? Like this is not who I normally am. And then like throw in you're one type of parent when your kids go to school all day and you have space and they have toys and you're playing. And then you're another kind of parent when you're in a room this big with them for months and months at a time and you're overstimulated and, and same with your spouse. Like it's going to be so fun. You're going to love it. And there's going to be so many experiences that make it worth it. But like, man, is it challenging? And you should probably have a therapist on speed dial for when you go out because you're going to go through all of these changes of like who you are, who you want to be, what you want to be as a parent, who you want to be as a spouse. Like there's going to be major shifts and lot of thoughts that you don't have time to process when you're at home that you're going to be processing.
I'm with you. I think funny you said that about therapists, like you said, getting raw. Like, and maybe Melody already told you this, but like,
she totally did.
2020 happens and we got thrown for a loop, and we had started working with a marriage and, family therapist for us individually and together.
Yes.
And we had worked through a bunch already, but it's interesting of how much like we really did. It was nice to have somebody to check in with,
to talk to. Yeah. It's just different. And I think that I went in knowing how hard it was going to be in some aspects, and the aspects that I thought would be really hard, like the time change for my kids or the travel, that ended up being super easy. Like they were little champions, and then the things that I had no idea, like, man, I'm going to really struggle with what type of mother I am or who I want to be on this trip because I am in a totally different setting. There's a lot of stress. I have ADHD and now I'm super overstimulated and I'm not on medication. And you know what I mean? Like, because you can't take ADHD medications to a lot of countries. Like there's so many things that you have to like look into and know, and just, you're going to be changing your life. Your life is going to look very different. And I think going into it with the realization of like, that's okay. And this is healthy, but it's hard,
Again, just kind of calling it out. It's going to be hard. Do you think it's worth, was it worth it?
Oh, it's totally worth it. I feel like I know myself better, and I feel like I parent better and I can communicate better both to my spouse and my kids. Like, I think that I know what I want more out of life. I think I know that like I don't want certain aspects of American living that we were so caught up in before. Like I'm taking pieces of these cultures and these things home with me to adapt and change and make my environment better. Definitely worth it. Even the hard.
Especially the hard.
Especially the hard. Yes.
I'm with you.
Yes. So
what are you doing to incorporate that into everyday life? Or is it another trip?
Yes. Oh, it'll probably be another trip too, but it's so funny. I've like gone on this. I love cooking, but like I make everything from scratch right now. Like I'm a psycho. Like I make all of our sauces. I'm making all of our baked goods. Like I'm starting a garden. Like I love how everything outside of the US is so fresh. You know what I mean? Like everything they're eating is, like you said, your son's stomach problems kind of went away. Like it's a different mindset around food there. And I have definitely started like incorporating that into our daily lives. And then just like minimalism. Like we don't need all this junk. Like we don't have to spend the money on this. It's like important to have time without our phones, because Americans are the only people with our phones right here all the time, like just so many little things. So,
I remember sitting, we were at one of the night markets in Thailand, and they're making dinner, I had to make some pad thai, and I was watching just like this ingredient, and some oil. And I was just like, I'm sitting there thinking this is pretty simple. This is pretty straightforward, and it tastes amazing. And you're right.
Amazing. Yeah.
So we've tried to incorporate that too. Like I have never been that person. We've always been just kind of American diet, but I've watched our family eating a lot more rice, a lot more simple chickens and beef. And I'm with you.
Yeah. So. It's just crazy. Your body feels better there. And I don't know if you guys had this problem, but like we've come home and we're okay with things that we eat at home. But if we eat out at restaurants, we get stomach ache so bad.
It's so apparent of how quickly like things changed. You get home and I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to believe that we just make it up, but it's true. It's true.
Yes. Which on the other side, like I was always like a very holistic, like healthy person because I have an autoimmune disease. And I think I had in my mind that they were cleaner about a lot of things. Like one thing was kind of hard was like you could not find unscented or unperfumed anything there. Like, and your options are so limited. It is what it is, like. So like that kind of stuff, like cleaners or anything like that, they are definitely not as clean-minded about that stuff as I thought they were. But their food at its core is just like better than ours.
Better, simple, and tastes amazing. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just
Aubrey,
crazy.
thanks for jumping on. I'm bummed Judd couldn't make it, but tell him we said hi.
I'm so sorry. I will tell Melody hi for me too.
It's all good. Thanks so much. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
See ya. Bye.